doctor looked at me with sad, professional eyes and told me I had 6 months to live. But the first thought in my mind was not about death, but about whether my children would even answer the phone when I called to tell them. The room was incredibly quiet. It was a sterile, white room with a slight smell of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. I sat on the edge of the examination table, clutching my handbag tightly with both hands. My knuckles were white. Dr. Evans, a kind man who had treated my high blood pressure for years, sat across from me. He had just delivered the news: pancreatic cancer, advanced, aggressive. There was nothing more they could do except manage the pain. "Margaret," he said softly, leaning forward. "Did you hear me?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, doctor, 6 months, maybe less." "Is there anyone I can call for you?" he asked. "Your son, David, or your daughter, Sarah?" I felt a sharp pain in my chest, and it wasn't from the cancer. It was the sting of humiliation. I didn't want to admit to this kind doctor that calling my children was a complicated task. I didn't want to say that David hadn't visited in 2 years, or that Sarah usually let my calls go to voicemail. "No," I said, forcing a small, polite smile. "I will tell them myself. They are very busy with their careers. I want to choose the right moment." Dr. Evans nodded, though I think he understood more than he said. He gave me a prescription for pain medication and a pamphlet about hospice care. I took them, put them in my bag, and walked out of the clinic. The world outside was shockingly normal. The sun was shining brightly, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. People were walking their dogs, laughing into their phones, and rushing to catch buses. I walked to my old blue sedan, got in, and just sat there for a long time. My hands were shaking. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was 72 years old. I had lived a full life. I had loved my husband, Robert, until the day he died 10 years ago. I had raised 2 children, but the thought of dying alone in that big, empty house terrified me. I started the car and drove home. My house is a 2-story colonial with a large garden. Robert and I bought it 40 years ago. We thought it would always be filled with noise and laughter. And for a long time, it was. I remember the sound of David running down the stairs, the sound of Sarah practicing the piano, the sound of family dinners. Now, as I unlocked the front door, the silence greeted me like a heavy blanket. The air smelled of dust and old books. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. Earl Grey, Robert's favorite. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone. I needed to call them. I couldn't keep this secret. I decided to call David first. David is my eldest. He is 45 now, a senior executive at a marketing firm in the city, 3 hours away. He has a wife, Linda, and no children. They are focused on their careers. My finger hovered over his name on my contact list. I took a deep breath. Just tell him, I thought. He is your son. He will care. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Usually, it goes to voicemail. Hello? His voice was clipped, impatient. David, it's Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom, look, I can't really talk right now, he said immediately. I could hear voices in the background, the sound of typing, the hum of an office. I'm about to step into a strategy meeting with a huge client. Is everything okay? Is the house burning down? He made a joke of it, but his tone wasn't funny. It was annoyed. No, the house is fine, I said. I went to the doctor today. Okay, he said, and I heard him sigh. And what did he say? High blood pressure again. You need to watch your salt intake, Mom. We've talked about this. It's not the salt, David, I said softly. It's something else. I need to tell you. David, they're waiting for you in the conference room. Someone shouted on his end. I have to go, Mom, David said, his voice rushing. I'm sorry. Let's catch up this weekend, okay? I'll call you Sunday. David, please wait, I whispered. But the line was already dead. He had hung up. I lowered the phone and stared at the black screen. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. He is busy, I told myself. He doesn't know. If he knew, he would have stayed on the line. But a small voice in my head whispered, would he? I waited an hour before I tried Sarah. Sarah is 42. She lives in a different state, a 5-hour drive away. She has 3 children, my grandchildren, whom I haven't seen since Christmas 2 years ago. I dialed her number. She answered on the 4th ring. Mom, hi. She sounded breathless. I could hear a television blaring cartoons and a dog barking. Hi, sweetie, I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Do you have a minute? Barely, she laughed, but it sounded stressed. Jason is refusing to eat his dinner, and Emily just spilled juice all over the carpet. Stop it, Jason. Mom, hang on. I waited, listening to the chaos of her life. I remembered those days. I remembered being overwhelmed. But I also remembered that when my mother called, I always made time. Okay, I'm back, Sarah said. What's up? Everything okay? I wanted to talk to you about something important, I said. I saw Dr. Evans today. Oh, did you get that refill? She asked, clearly only half listening. Jason, eat your peas. Mom, can I call you back? It is absolute madness here right now. Sarah, please, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's bad news. There was a pause. For a second, I thought she heard me. Mom, I really can't right now, she said, sounding exasperated. Unless it's an emergency. Can we do this later? I promise I'll call you tomorrow morning when the kids are at school. We can talk for an hour. Okay. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Okay, tomorrow morning. Great, love you, Mom, bye. She hung up. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. The tea had gone cold. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, lonely shadows across the floor. I had 6 months to live, and I couldn't even get my children to listen to me for 5 minutes. That night was the hardest. I lay in the big double bed that used to be shared with Robert. I looked at the ceiling. I thought about all the birthdays, the soccer games, the scraped knees I had bandaged, the sleepless nights I had spent when they were sick. I had given my entire life to them. I had sacrificed my own career as a teacher to be a stay-at-home mother, because I wanted to be there for every moment. And now I was an inconvenience, a notification on their phone they could swipe away. The next morning, I sat by the phone, waiting for Sarah to call. 9 o'clock passed, then 10, then 11. At noon, I realized she wasn't going to call. She had forgotten. Just like she forgot my birthday last month until 2 days later. I felt a strange sensation then. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. I stood up and looked out the window at my garden. It was spring, and the tulips were trying to push through the soil, but the garden was a mess. Weeds were growing everywhere. I hadn't had the energy to tend to it lately. I am dying, I said aloud to the empty room. I am dying, and I am wasting my last days waiting by the telephone. I decided then that I wouldn't call them again. I would wait. I wanted to see how long it would take for them to reach out to me on their own. It was a test, perhaps a cruel one, but I needed to know. Days turned into weeks. My health began to decline slowly. I felt tired all the time. My appetite vanished. I lost weight. My clothes started to hang loosely on my frame. During this time, the silence of the house became unbearable, so I started spending more time in the front yard. One afternoon, I was trying to drag a heavy bag of trash to the curb. My arms were weak, and I was out of breath. I stumbled, and the bag ripped, spilling garbage onto the driveway. "Oh no," I cried out, tears of frustration filling my eyes. I felt so helpless. "Here, let me help you with that." I looked up to see a young woman jogging toward me. She lived in the small rental house next door. I had seen her before. She had bright red hair and always wore colorful scarves, but we had never really spoken. "Oh, you don't have to," I said, embarrassed. "It's dirty." "Don't be silly," she said with a bright smile. She grabbed the bag, tied it up efficiently, and carried it to the curb as if it weighed nothing. She walked back to me, wiping her hands on her jeans. "I'm Jenny, by the way." "I'm Margaret," I said. "Thank you, Jenny. I'm afraid I'm not as strong as I used to be." Jenny looked at me, really looked at me. Her eyes were green and kind. She didn't look past me like the cashier at the grocery store, and she didn't look impatient like my son. "Are you okay, Margaret?" she asked. "You look a little pale." I hesitated. I had been holding the truth inside for 3 weeks. I hadn't told a soul. Not my neighbors, not my few remaining friends from the bridge club. But looking at this stranger, this young woman who had stopped just to help me, the dam broke. "I'm sick," I said simply. "I have cancer." Jenny's face softened. She didn't recoil. She didn't look at her watch. She reached out and gently touched my arm. "I am so sorry," she said. "Is there anyone here with you?" "Family." I looked at the ground. "No, my children. They live far away. They are very busy." Jenny didn't judge. She just nodded. "Well," she said, "I'm not busy. I work freelance from home. How about I come over and make us some tea? I have some excellent cookies my mother sent me." That afternoon, Jenny came over. We sat in my living room, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Jenny was 28, a graphic designer. She told me about her bad dates, her demanding clients, and her dream of traveling to Japan. I told her about Robert, about my years teaching, and about the garden I used to love. I didn't talk about David or Sarah. It hurt too much. As the weeks went by, Jenny became a fixture in my life. She didn't replace my children. Nothing could replace them. But she filled the void. She noticed when I was having a bad day. She started doing my grocery shopping without me asking. On Tuesdays, she would come over, and we would watch old movies together. One rainy Tuesday in my 3rd month, the pain became bad. It started in my stomach and radiated to my back. It was a sharp, biting pain that made me gasp. I was lying on the sofa, clutching a pillow. I knew I needed help. I grabbed my phone. It had been 6 weeks since I spoke to David. 7 weeks since I spoke to Sarah. I called David. "Please answer," I prayed. "Just this once." "You have reached the voicemail of David Miller. Please leave a message." I hung up. I couldn't leave a message saying, "I'm dying, please come." It felt too pathetic. I called Sarah. "Hi, this is Sarah. Leave a message." I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out and ran down my cheeks. My own flesh and blood. They were too busy living their lives to realize mine was ending. I scrolled down and found Jenny's number. I pressed call. "Hey, Margaret," she answered on the first ring. "I was just thinking about you. I found a recipe for lemon cake I want to try." "Jenny," I whispered, "I need help." "I'm coming," she said. "No questions. No excuses, just I'm coming." She was there in 2 minutes. She found me on the sofa, saw the pain in my face, and immediately called an ambulance. She rode with me to the hospital, holding my hand the entire way. At the hospital, they gave me morphine and stabilized me. Dr. Evans was there. He looked at Jenny, assuming she was my daughter. "She needs rest," Dr. Evans said to Jenny. "Her condition is progressing. She shouldn't be alone at home anymore." Jenny nodded. "I'll make sure she isn't." When I woke up a few hours later, Jenny was sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to my bed. She was holding a magazine, her head lolling to the side. My heart swelled with gratitude, but also with a profound sadness. Why was this neighbor here, while my children were hundreds of miles away, unaware? "Jenny," I whispered. She woke up instantly. "Margaret, you're awake. Do you need water?" "I need to make a call," I said. My voice was stronger now. The morphine had dulled the pain, and the realization had sharpened my mind. But not to them. I need to call my lawyer. Jenny looked confused, but she handed me my phone. The next day, I went home. Jenny practically moved in. She set up her laptop on my dining table and worked from there. We hired a nurse to come in the mornings, but Jenny was there in the evenings. I decided to stop waiting for David and Sarah. I stopped checking the phone. I stopped hoping for the car to pull into the driveway. Instead, I focused on what I had left. I asked Jenny to help me to the garden. I sat in a chair while Jenny, under my instruction, pulled the weeds. We planted new tulips for next spring. I knew I wouldn't see them bloom, but the thought of them growing there gave me peace. Why do you plant them if? Jenny trailed off, biting her lip. If I won't be here, I finished for her. I smiled. Because a garden is a promise to the future, Jenny. Even if it's not my future. In my 5th month, I declined rapidly. I was mostly bedridden. The nurse, a sturdy woman named Brenda, was there during the day. Jenny was there every night. One evening, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was David. I stared at it. For a moment, my old instinct kicked in the desire to answer, to hear his voice, to pretend everything was fine. But I was too tired for pretending. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. 5 minutes later, Sarah called. I let that ring too. They left messages. I listened to them later. David, hey Mom, sorry I haven't called in a while. Work has been brutal. Just wanted to see how you are. Call me back. Sarah, hi Mom. The kids miss you. We're thinking about maybe visiting in the summer if we can get the time off. Let me know what you think. Summer, I thought. I won't be here in the summer. I didn't call them back. Instead, I asked Jenny to bring me my stationery box. I had always loved writing letters. I had beautiful cream-colored paper and a fountain pen. I need to write to them, I told Jenny. Do you want me to call them and tell them to come? Jenny asked, her eyes full of tears. She was angry on my behalf. She had seen the empty house. She knew the silence. No, I said firmly. If they came now, it would only be out of guilt. I don't want their guilt. I want to leave them something true. I spent 3 days writing those letters. To David, I wrote about how proud I was of his success. But I also wrote about the little boy who used to cry when he couldn't find me in the supermarket. I told him that success is warm, but it cannot hold your hand when you are sick. I told him I loved him, but I also told him that he had broken my heart. To Sarah, I wrote about her laughter. I reminded her that family isn't just for when it's convenient. I told her that I understood the chaos of motherhood, but that a mother never stops needing her children, just as children never stop needing their mother. And then I wrote a 3rd letter to Jenny. I put the letters in envelopes and sealed them. I placed them on the nightstand. Jenny, I said on a Tuesday night. The pain was gone, replaced by a strange, floating sensation. The room felt hazy. Can you open the window? I want to smell the garden. Jenny opened the window. The cool night air drifted in, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. It's beautiful, I whispered. It is, Jenny said, sitting beside me and taking my hand. Her hand was warm. You have been a good daughter to me, Jenny, I said. My voice was very quiet now. Better than I could have asked for. Jenny began to cry softly. You're my family, Margaret. I have made some changes to my will, I said. The lawyer came last week. The house. I'm not leaving it to David or Sarah. They would just sell it. They don't care about the memories here. Jenny looked at me, shocked. Margaret, you can't. I can, I said. I'm leaving it to you. On one condition. You have to keep the garden. And you have to plant tulips every year. Margaret, I can't accept that, she sobbed. You earned it, I said. You were here. Being a family is a verb, Jenny. It's an action. It's not just blood. You acted like family. They didn't. I closed my eyes. I felt incredibly tired, but it was a good tired, like the feeling after a long day of hiking. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't alone. I had Jenny holding my hand. I had the smell of my garden. Read me something, I asked. Jenny picked up the book we had been reading, a classic novel about sisters. She began to read, her voice shaky at first, then steadying. I listened to the rhythm of her voice. I thought about Robert. I thought he would be waiting for me. I wondered if he would be angry with me for what I did about the house. But then I realized he would have loved Jenny too. The last thing I remember was the sound of the wind in the trees outside, and the feeling of a warm hand in mine. Epilogue, narrated from a perspective beyond, or perhaps a reflection. I died peacefully in my sleep that night. My children did come, eventually. They came for the funeral. I can imagine the scene. David, in his expensive suit, looking at his watch, checking his emails during the service. Sarah crying loudly, perhaps performing her grief a little bit for the onlookers. They stood by the grave, and they looked at the headstone, and for the first time in years, they were physically close to me. But they were too late. After the funeral, the lawyer called them to the reading of the will. I wish I could have seen their faces. They expected the house. They expected the money. They expected the final reward for being my children. Instead, they got the letters. David opened his. He read it in the lawyer's office. I hope he read the part where I said, I waited for you. I waited until I couldn't wait anymore. I hope it haunts him in his quiet moments. I hope it teaches him to be better to his wife. Sarah read hers and wept. Real tears this time. Tears of regret. She realized that later is a dangerous word because sometimes later never comes. And Jenny still lives in the house. I see her sometimes, in the way a memory lingers in a place. She paints in the sunroom. She has a dog now, a golden retriever that runs around the yard. And the garden has never looked more beautiful. Every spring, hundreds of tulips bloom. Red, yellow, purple. They are a riot of color in the neighborhood. People walk by and say, "Look at that beautiful garden." They don't know the story behind it. They don't know that it was grown from sadness and saved by the kindness of a stranger. I thought I would die of a broken heart. And in a way, I did. My heart was broken by the people who should have protected it. But it was also healed, right at the end, by someone who owed me nothing. If you are listening to this, and you have a mother or a father you haven't called in a while, pick up the phone. Don't say, "I'm busy." Don't say, "next week," because the phone might ring in an empty house. And by the time you decide to visit, the only thing waiting for you might be a letter. I am Margaret. I was a mother. I was a friend. And in the end, I was not alone.